Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and the Master League Premier Cup has returned once again. And this time, with the significant changes we had at the start of the season, what's good in this meta has shifted quite a bit. Today, I'm making the argument that the best core in the entire meta on day 1 is Best Buddy Florges plus Golisopod. Florges' new move Trailblaze is absurd in this meta, allowing it to boost through bad matchups, and basically anything that Florges can't beat, Golisopod will be able to handle for it. I paired these two up with a Garchomp, immediately went 5-0 back over 2900 elo, and then ran out of opponents. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches. And we're off to a tough start in game number 1, Florges into Magnezone. This is basically the only Pokemon that on paper should be able to beat this core. However, as you're going to see, Florges into Magnezone is genuinely not terrible. I'm going to fire off a Trailblaze right off the bat. My opponent is going to farm up to a Wild Charge plus a Mirror Shot. 2 Mirror Shots do not KO here, so if they double Mirror Shot, I can tank both and make a boosted Moonblast. But if they Wild Charge, suddenly they are debuffed and life gets very uncomfortable. They double Wild Charge, they pivot out into their own Florges, and now that they've given up switch advantage, I get to guarantee that Magnezone is going to be on the Garchomp in the back. So this is basically the worst case scenario lead, and it honestly still doesn't even feel that terrible. I'm sending in Golisopod into the Florges just because I basically want to try and rely on Garchomp to sweep this game. Basically every time that Master Premier debuts, day 1 to 2 Garchomp is always just unbelievable because it has insanely good stats, so it's just able to outbulk so many Pokemon. Eventually, double fairy strategies and whatnot make Garchomp a bit worse to use, but on day 1, it's always absolutely amazing. In comes the Garchomp, in the back is Shadow Rhyperior, and my opponent is ABA weak to ground. Now I get to spam out these Sand Tubes, applying so much pressure to my opponent, and my opponent, they're now 1 off the Breaking Swipe. I need to preserve HP, so I'm just going to catch onto the Florges. My opponent's Florges is low enough that they should not make another move. They are going to get a little bit of extra energy on that Florges, but I will get a farm down now with the Garchomp. In comes Magnezone, and Magnezone just can't damage Garchomp. Mirror Shot just does not do nearly enough damage. I Sand Tomb, I get the farm down. All that's left in the back is the low HP Florges, and despite seeing the only thing that core breaks this core, we're able to get the win. We move to the next match, Florges versus Florges. Now this is a lead you're going to see very commonly, so it's very nice to have Best Buddy equipped on Florges. So that way if your opponent doesn't, you guaranteed win the CMP tie. I'm not 100% sold on the best way to play out this lead, to be honest. I've tried it Moonblasting first, and I've tried it Trailblazing first. In the mirror, basically the first move will always be no-shielded anyway. Here my opponent actually gets a Moonblast attack debuff. That means I can't Trailblaze for the knockout, I'm forced to Moonblast again. So, I don't have as much residual energy as I'd like. Out comes Goldengo. Goldengo, another buffed Pokemon. Hex got a big buff, and Dazzling Gleam as well. Goldengo's an amazing pick right now for this meta. Here, my opponent is actually going to no-shield the Aqua Jet, return fire with the Shadow Ball. That does big damage to Golisopod. In comes Rhyperior, and Rhyperior will be forced to shield as Aqua Jet hits for double super effective damage. Rhyperior looking for the farm down, getting the farm down, denying Golisopod's energy, but in comes Garchomp. Garchomp, with this massive stat product, able to shake off super effective Breaking Swipes. Opponent does actually get the attack drop there. I'm going to farm up, bluffing a potential Earth Power, and I'm going for the Sand Tomb. That will be shielded up by my opponent, and now I have a call to make. I'm going to call that they stay in. So I switch into Florges, we snipe with the Trailblaze after 1 Fairy Wind, and that's going to secure the win. As my opponent will only now just be getting to a Shadow Ball, I'll be able to fire off a boosted Moonblast, and Florges will get to KO a Steel type as we're going to move to 2-0 in this set. I think the Florges mirror is a pretty scary one because if you end up shielding a Trailblaze, things can get very uncomfortable, but the good news is we're able to get the win. Florges against Golisopod. This is a pretty fine matchup. Florges does win the 0 shield. In the 1s and the 2s, Golisopod typically favored, but it's still close. Golisopod strikes first with the Aqua Jet. I go for the Trailblaze bait, and there's a wonderful catch by my opponent onto Goldengo. Goldengo gonna shake off that damage like it's nothing. I send out Golisopod. Golisopod more than happy to continually apply a ton of pressure to Goldengo. Aqua Jet is going to land. Goldengo firing off its Shadow Ball, wanting to guarantee some damage onto Golisopod. I know Golisopod can survive there, so I'm very comfortable with that no shield. Opponent gonna bring back in their own Golisopod, and I will fire off the X-Scissor. X-Scissor is gonna be no shielded by my opponent. I get to the last second move, but I do end up losing the coin flip CMD tie. So they'll get the knockout with Aerial Ace. I bring in Garchomp, and oh no, it's Avalugg in the back! Oh, that is not what I needed to see. Double super effective ice damage. It's up to Florges to clutch. Florges goes for a Trailblaze. Opponent does end up shielding instantly here. They know if they can keep this Avalugg healthy, they're going to be in a pretty decent spot. I got a bit lucky that they shielded the first because I didn't farm up to the Moonblast. This time I will farm up to the Moonblast and get the shield. My opponent does end up throwing a move. I'm going to be debuffed, but I will make the Moonblast. I'm just going to switch when I get the Moonblast because they may try for a catch, and they do. So they actually ended up switching one early, but the plan was, if I made the Moonblast, just switch because my opponent has to try for a catch. I'm now going to go for a Sand Tomb, hoping that this will put it into one Dragon Tail range, and it does, because I need the health on the Garchomp. Avalugg looking for the farm down, but it can't quite get there. We're going to see a Sand Tomb connect, debuffing their defense, and now Moonblast will be lethal. Moonblast knocking out the Avalugg, and we're 3-0 in the set. We move to game number 4, and surprise, surprise, it's another Florges Mirror. But once again, my opponent does not have Best Buddy Boost equipped. I'm just going to start off by Trailblazing. I feel like Trailblazing first probably makes the most sense, because that way if you end up having your opponent shield a Trailblaze later on, things can get very uncomfortable. So I'm going to try and play it out this way. My opponent does go for the Moonblast. They settle for a Trailblaze. They threw on 6 here, so I know that this is only going to be the Trailblaze. That's very okay. And I'm going to farm up and fire off the Moonblast. Moonblast will pick up the knockout if they let it through, which they do. In comes Rhyperior, but unfortunately, it looks like either they lagged by a turn or it got the damage registration error. That is really unfortunate, as typically I would not get that move. So I have really favorable alignment here, Golisopod into Rhyperior. They only farm up to a Breaking Swipe, and now in the back is Ursaluna, and I'm going to send in Garchomp. If they have Ice Punch, this could get tricky. If they don't have Ice Punch, then alignment was just really favorable for me anyway. And they do not have Ice Punch, which means that realistically, even if it was even shields, the alignment is just so favorable here that this should be a win. They are going to make one final charge attack. If this was even shields, this is the point of the match where I would just stop tapping. Let my opponent get me as low as possible, because that way they don't get a lot of Rhyperior farm. But since I'm up a shield, the Rhyperior farm just does not matter. I'll be able to fire off multiple Aqua Jets at the Rhyperior. Rhyperior is going to shield the first. They are going to be able to grab the first shield of mine with a Rock Wrecker, but I am one off Aqua Jet number 2, and they are going to resign the match. We're now looking for the 5-0 set badly, leading into Goldengo. The safe switch into Golisopod, answered with a Dragon Breath Gyarados. Now, this may be a matchup where some people do want Aerial Ace, but Aerial Ace actually only does 2 more damage to Gyarados than Aqua Jet. So for me, I don't really see tremendous value in Aerial Ace, just purely off the fact that it's just a really bad move to start with, and it does not get same type attack bonus. So I'm just going to spam out the Aqua Jets here. Aqua Jet, a pretty solid move even when it is resisted. Opponent is forced to fire off some energy. But this should work in my favor, because now look at this Florges farm. This Florges farm is absolutely outrageous. Opponent not wanting to concede switch advantage, but by not giving up switch, I'm now going to exit almost at 100 energy. In comes Goldengo. I'm going to get to land a Moonblast, and that will put it a lot closer to Sand Tomb range. Now in comes the Garchomp. Opponent is going to switch out into Golisopod, and things are looking pretty good here. I'm farming up. Unfortunately, I did try and throw one sooner there, but it looks like I may have hit the button slightly too late. They do end up shielding the Sand Tomb bait, and the Sand Tomb Dragon Tail combination is just a deadly one. Here, my opponent throws an Aerial Ace for just absolutely no reason. Aqua Jet neutrally does way more damage, and they're the same energy cost, so it's not even a bait. I can't really explain why they did what they did, but since they didn't go straight Aqua Jet, I'm actually able to only have to use one of my shields instead of 2. And my opponent is now going to try and have this Hex knock out here. The Hex did go through, but it will not KO. Garchomp is able to make a last-second Sand Tomb number 2, and since they're -2, I mean, Florges can just clean up this game. My opponent, it's really tough, because even if they had the Shadow Ball, it would not knock out Florges from that health range, and we get our 5-0 set. The remaining battles are going to be practice battles with members of my Discord, because I did want to play more games, but there were quite literally just no other trainers queuing in the 2900s in this league, so unfortunately I had to go an alternative route if I wanted to play this format. So I'm going to go for the Trailblaze, they're going to go for the Moonblast, and that is going to deal some pretty significant damage. Again, I'm best buddied and my opponent is not, so I can always play to the CMP tie here. Moonblast delivers the knockout and down goes Florges, in comes Goldango. Goldango is a Pokemon that I do want to try because every time I played against it, it felt powerful. This thing is very, very strong. Aqua Jet is going to land. Goldango can return fire with the Shadow Ball, but I'm very comfortable absorbing this damage. So they land the Shadow Ball, they're going to bring in their own Golisopod, and this is going to set up a pretty significant farm down. X-Scissor is going to be shielded. I'm going to get close to another move, but I can't quite get there. In comes Florges just to force my opponent to waste some energy. It's going to be the Garchomp show to close this out. Florges barely hangs on. I'm not sure if they undercharged or if Florges is just that much of a tank, but I get a Trailblaze and all damage helps. Now I can send in the Garchomp, and Garchomp is going to look for massive, massive farm. Aqua Jet is going to connect. Aqua Jet's still a pretty solid move, even against a very bulky Pokemon like Garchomp. Aqua Jet number 2 is going to connect. I'm going to look for the farm down. Now it's my opponent's turn to get the damage registration error. I got it earlier, and now my opponent does get their revenge. And back in comes Goldango, but Garchomp should be in a great position to close this one out. Garchomp makes a last-second Sand Tomb. Sand Tomb was clutch so many times today. That's going to KO Goldango, and we escape with a very close win. Dream Lead in the next match, Annihilate. Unfortunately, not a particularly fun time in a Florges Golisopod meta. They safe switch a Shadow Excadrill, and oh my goodness, they are so weak. Trailblaze connects. There's another Trailblaze. We can ramp up Florges more and more and more. Florges, very, very scary right here. I make it to even another Trailblaze, and this poor Excadrill, they still haven't gotten to throw their energy. They're going to throw one in the move, and we're going to catch the Drill Run onto our Bug-type Golisopod, where it is going to be resisted. My opponent going to look to farm up energy. They switch at the last second, and in comes Annihilate. Annihilate going to look to boost up its attack with Rage Fist, but Annihilate doesn't really have a lot of places to go here. I will fire off the Aqua Jet. That does some okay damage. They're going to have to throw again, otherwise I could make another move. I could shield the Golisopod, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up farm for Garchomp, because Garchomp can be very, very scary with energy. Opponent is going to make a double boosted move. I am going to respect this because I have to shield something in this game. And now, let's see what they're going to do. They bring in Shadow Rhyperior. I send in the Florges. Florges answered with the Shadow Excadrill. And here, arguably, I make a misplay. I don't think I should have shielded that. I throw 2 in the move, but I think Rhyperior may be able to farm me down. I think I should have just let it go and trusted in the Garchomp's energy. In comes Rhyperior, but they don't trust the farm down. That puts me right back in this game. Outrage plus a few fast moves should be enough to knock out, but I don't trust it. I'm going double Sand Tomb, but what double Sand Tomb leaves me open to is the possibility to lose because of a Breaking Swipe debuff. So instead of a win, it's now a 50-50, and they get the debuff, and that's going to allow them to take the win. Huge misplays in this game by me. If I just save shield for Garchomp, Garchomp was absolutely inevitable in that endgame. We move to the final match, leading a Florges into an XXL Rhyperior. Oh my goodness. You absolutely love to see a Trailblaze is going to be no-shielded, and to me that is the correct way to play this out as Rhyperior. Rhyperior is always going to get outpaced in this matchup, so it may as well no-shield the one that's going to do the least amount of damage. I'm going to fire off another Trailblaze, really looking to apply some pressure. Opponent is going to let this go. In comes Goldango, and now I get to send in Golisopod. Golisopod farming up, going to fire off an Aqua Jet. Aqua Jet will do some pretty solid damage. Shield comes out from Goldango, and they're going to return fire with a Shadow Ball. I know that I can survive it from playing this matchup out earlier. Opponent going to send in a Shadow Snorlax, and this is where things will get tricky because this is basically perfect farm down range for my opponent, and they do exit with some energy. I can bring back in Florges though. Florges should be able to make a Moonblast into the Shadow Snorlax. Moonblast will inflict some pretty solid damage, so I will make the Moonblast, and Moonblast, if they no-shield it, is going to hurt quite a bit. They are going to let it go, just using Snorlax as a damage sponge, rapidly approaching the Trailblaze, so that's going to force my opponent's hand. They go for the body slam, in comes Garchomp, back in comes Goldengo, but I believe Goldengo has enough stored energy to where I'm going to just have to eat a Dazzling Gleam, and that does big damage, and suddenly I might lose this game. I'm going to go for the Sand Tomb right away, but I think I may have to try and commit to a Dragon Tail farm down to win. Opponent is going to throw a move, so I do get the Dragon Tail through. This is going to be close, right down to the wire. We get the farm down, very low HP remaining, and we leave with the Outrage. Outrage knocks out the Shadow Snorlax, and my goodness, that game got way closer than expected. Goldengo is a terrifying Pokemon in this format. All in all, I think that the Master League Premier Cup, there's enough that's changed that I think it is a very interesting format across the board. I think Best Buddy on Florges will be a huge advantage. So for those who've had Florges for a while and have the Best Buddy boost equipped, it's been really good in Master Premier's past. I think Best Buddy on Florges is even more important in this Master Premier iteration just because Florges is arguably the best Pokemon. And Golisopod, it just provides so much neutral play, even in the game where an opponent counter-switched to Gyarados. Shadow Claw and Aqua Jet just adds up so much. From game 1, it's pretty apparent the worst thing that you can see is a Magnezone, but even against a Magnezone, soft losing it with the Florges, trying to set up Golisopod to sweep, there is still play there. So I think, at least for day 1 of this format, that this core, the people I've recommended it to, they've had very positive results. I went 5-0 in the set that I was able to play, so I think this core paired with Garchomp is a really good starting spot for this particular iteration of the Master League Premier Cup, because my goodness, Trailblaze on Florges, if you end up accidentally shielding a Trailblaze somewhere in that mirror, Florges can just run away with games. It's very, very scary, and Golisopod is just so neutral into basically everything that you can encounter. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is so appreciated, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.